So it looks like Kevin Spoilers is the last one out with a Shang-Chi breakdown. You can unsubscribe, dislike all you want, but don't let the door hit you on the way back, as we have a lot of big theories for the post-credit scene of the Marvel movie that I haven't seen discussed in any other videos. They were great, yeah sure, they were great, but I think there's a lot of big clues as to when the movie is set in the timeline, how it sets up Secret Wars, and also what it tells us about the upcoming She-Hulk show. We're going to be discussing it all in this video, but heavy spoilers ahead, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, then I highly recommend that you check out now. Smash a thumbs up button if you enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe for breakdowns like this each and every day. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Okay, so first up, I want to discuss the second post-credit scene, as I think that's the more straightforward of the two. As always, if you don't want to hear the sound of my voice narrating what you've just seen in a very dull British accent, then timecodes will be linked below, and I won't be mad at you for skipping ahead. I promise. Okay, so are they gone? Yeah, what a bunch of bloody they were, eh? I put all this work into this video and they just skip ahead. Oh, anyway, the second post-credit scene sees Xialing taking up her father's organization, also known as the Ten Rings. We were told that she was disbanding the group, however we find her in a similar position to what Wenwu was, sitting on a throne as her fighters start to train to take over everything. Before we talk about this though, I think we need to discuss how the movie plays out in order to fully understand how we got to this point. Now we start off the movie over 1000 years ago and see how the Ten Rings enabled her father to become immortal and build his organization over the centuries. Early on in the film we take a trip to the past and learn the full backstory of the real Mandarin. I said the real Mandarin. The real Mandarin. Perfection. Now Tony Leung perfectly plays the antagonist, and he makes for one of the most compelling villains in the MCU due to his heavily emotionally enthused portrayal of the Marvel Universe's greatest criminal mind. Due to the power of the rings, Wenwu builds a vast empire known as the Ten Rings, and in the film we very much see the power of one's name and how it builds a legend. This idea of family and the past has a massive influence on the key characters, and it very much sets up the direction that both Shang-Chi and his sister will be travelling in. Turns out that this idea of a name and the power that it holds is what inspired Aldrich Killian to adopt the moniker the Mandarin, and Wenwu very much brushes the idea of Iron Man 3 to the side in order to cement himself. We see that after Wenwu meets the guardian of a mystical village called Ta Lo Can You Go, he falls in love with her and decides to leave the rings behind. The pair start a family, but after she's murdered by a group known as the Iron Gang, he becomes the man that he once was in order to exact revenge. The guy said get Iron Gang, and they thought he meant Iron Man, hey? Now early on in the movie, Wenwu pushed his son to follow in his footsteps, and he very much brushed Xialing to the side. However, she was spurred on by this and secretly trained herself in the ways of the Ten Rings. This idea of living up to what her father wanted her to be, I think very much explains why she took over the empire, and I do believe that she will be one of the big foes in the next film. The film follows Shang-Chi and Xialing as they try and stop Wenwu from unleashing a soul-sucking monster, who reminds me of my mother-in-law. Now this creature has hypnotized the villain into believing that it's actually his wife, and thus he sets out to Ta Lo in order to free it. Unfortunately, he learns the truth too late and is killed by the monster, but this allows the Ten Rings to be taken over by Xialing, who steps into his place as the new ruler. In the final scene, she's joined by John and also Razor Fist, showing that she's encompassing her already established endeavours and pulling them together with her father's organisation. Now though it is possible that she's gonna end up guiding the Ten Rings on a more positive path, I think that we can tell by the themes in the film that she's more inclined to be like her dear old dad. The two parental figures in the movie, aka Ying Li and Wenwu, both have an influence on their children, and Shang-Chi ends up acting a lot more like the former, whereas Xialing becomes a lot more like the latter. It is possible that in the future we will see Shang-Chi end up as a guardian of Ta Lo, much like his mother, whereas his sister will do the complete opposite. However, if his dad wanted him to take over, he should have put 10 rings on it. Hey, I'll stop with all that. I think that a couple of phases will have to happen before we get to this point, but this idea is hinted at when Shang-Chi ends up unlocking the full potential of the rings, which glow orange in the same way that they did when his mother possessed them. This is something that his father could not do, and this idea of being worthy is something that we've of course seen in the likes of Thor's hammer. Juxtaposing this, Xialing will take the opposite path and much like her father, she'll end up continuing to boost the Ten Rings as a vast criminal empire. Now, because of where we're introduced to her, I think we can guess who she'll be working with. In the movie, we meet her in Macau and learn that she ran away from her father's compound in order to create a fighting tournament there. Xialing built a vast business that pulls in people from around the world, and it could be possible that this caught the attention of someone else who was operating in Asia at the time. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we learned that Sharon Carter had ended up building her own criminal empire in Madripoor, and that she was now going under the identity of the Power Broker in order to remanufacture the Super Soldier Serum. Though this was destroyed, the series ended with her getting a foothold in America, and she was given access to all manner of operations. We know that she was speaking to someone else about joining her plans and taking over, and it is possible that the pair know one another and that they will be working together in the future to infiltrate the US. There are also currently a vast number of Black Widows out in the world as well, and I have a feeling that Xialing will end up reaching out or working with these groups in order to build an international empire that has agents in every country around the world. Now, interestingly, this idea of her mother's ideology being part of the organization can also be seen in the symbol itself, as her flower is now in the center. Originally there were two blades, but this has been changed up in order to reflect the new mindset. Anyway, shoutouts Ryan Airy from Screen Crush for pointing out that the rings themselves could actually be a combination of the rings and the quantum bands. In the comics, they're far more like the Infinity Stones, with each ring possessing its own power and ability. However, Marvel clearly didn't just want to simply repeat the past, and they've meshed the two ideas together in order to form the rings. What do you mean I said I wasn't talking about what the other videos were? No, but this has actually been shown in things like the Tesseract, which was an amalgamation of the Space Stone and also the Cosmic Cube from the comics. As for the bands, they could be wielded by someone who was deemed as being worthy, and these cosmic bracelets were worn around the wrists, much like the rings are. They themselves pulled from the quantum realm, and it is possible that this beacon may have also awakened Kang the Conqueror, whose home of Chronopolis could be seen in Ant-Man Quantumania. I actually think that Xialing will attempt to get these back from her brother, as they are of course the symbol of the organization, and there's also a possibility that she is worthy too. Much like her brother, she has aspects of both her father and mother in her personality, and these two sides of the same coin to me are the key to unlocking the full potential of the Ten Rings. Now, in the comics, the rings themselves were actually created by an alien race known as the McLuhan, which Fing Fang Foom originates from. In the prologue, it is said that the rings possibly came from a crater, and this could have been caused by a meteorite which the Great Protector may have travelled along with. Fing Fang Foom is a potential character that the beacon could have reached out to, and it is possible that he will be coming into the sequel, as we've already been introduced to a dragon-like creature in this one. Now, speaking of the rings, that takes us perfectly into the second post-credit scene, which heavily revolves around their true nature being revealed. As we've talked about, they did send out a beacon, and though it could be messaging the McLuhan, I actually have another theory that I think makes a lot of sense from what we know about the future of the MCU. Now, the film ends with Wong arriving at a restaurant, and he takes Shang and Katie to the Sanctum Sanctorum. Here they encounter Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers through similar hologram tech to what we saw in Endgame. Now, in Endgame, Carol's hair was quite short, and due to the length we see here, I'd say that it's been at least a year since the blip brought everyone back. Bruce is also back to normal and no longer Professor Hulk, and I think that the last Avengers movie gave us a big clue about how this could have happened. In the film, we watched as Banner figured out a way to push time through someone instead of pushing someone through time, and it is possible that he used this to reverse the effects of his transformation. We do know that Mark Ruffalo will be appearing in the upcoming She-Hulk series, and I'm guessing that if Smart Hulk was in it, that the CGI budget would be bigger than my ego. Though I enjoyed Smart Hulk, I'm someone who prefers the idea of the Jolly Green Giant being a curse, so I'm glad they pressed the reset button on it and returned it to what it was. Now, due to our rough estimation about the timeline, I would say that this movie takes place way after the events of No Way Home. In the trailer for the upcoming Spider-Man movie, we watched as Wong went on vacation, and it is possible that he then met with the Abomination and started to train him like what we see in the movie. Anyway, the beacon could have reached out to a number of potential people, and I've seen a lot of YouTubers say that they believe it's Galactus. Personally, I don't think that's the case, as he's not connected to Shang-Chi or the rings, and that would be like introducing Darkseid through a Jimmy Olsen comic. What do you mean that's exactly what happened? Anyway, I think that's unlikely, and the three possibilities that I've settled on are Fing Fang Foom, the Celestials, and the Beyonder. Now, we've already talked about the first, and the second option will likely be confirmed in the next couple of months. From the trailer, we know that the Celestials have been awakened, and in the teaser we see a Celestial egg travelling to Earth. In the comics, this creates a new Celestial, and though they are being portrayed as the good guys, it's possible that stopping them will also be a requirement for saving the planet. Now, the last option is kind of my wild card, but yeah, you've sat this long, so hear me out. Now, the Beyonder isn't really that famous of a character, but those who are aware of the comics will know that he was pivotal to the Secret Wars story. In that book, the multiverse was torn open, and the Beyonder pulled together the fragments of it in order to form a new Earth that was called Battleworld. This was divided up into continents, all with their own rulers, and we watched as versions of the characters from across the multiverse battled for their own survival. We already know that the multiverse is going to be a big part of the MCU in the next phase, and it would be awesome to see characters from the X-Men and Sonyverse going head to head in order to join the MCU timeline. Now, my theory for the next film is that we discover that a beacon has been sent out across the cosmos, and that it's been picked up by the Beyonder. During this time, Xialing ends up gaining access to the 10 rings, and she takes these from her brother. The Beyonder then arrives on Earth to find her starting to take over, and he takes her under his wing to formulate the next part of his plan. After tearing the multiverse apart, he forms Battleworld and puts her in charge due to her knowledge of running a fighting tournament. From here, we watch as all of the franchises from pretty much every single studio get pulled together, and this forms one MCU timeline in which everything is canon. The multiverse also being split open and the rings being connected to the quantum realm may call forth Kang, who could continue to be the big bad for the next phase. What I love about the idea of He Who Remains in Kang is that you never know if you're going to be seeing a good or evil version of the character, and it just opens the door for so many possibilities. I think it would be amazing if the Secret Wars storyline happened and we met a version of Kang that seemed to be good on the surface. He could help the heroes pull together the multiverse into one timeline, only then to reveal that he did this to rule over the entire thing. I would absolutely love that twist, and though it's a long shot, I think the pieces are in place that could hint towards this. Now, as for my thoughts on the film, I have to say that I really enjoyed the first hour, though I did have some issues with the pacing in the second. I feel that everything was incredible until they hit the village, and then from there it kind of went off the rails a bit, slowed right down and introduced a threat that I didn't really think was all that necessary. Personally, I would have preferred it if they'd kept the Mandarin as the main baddie, and that's simply because I found him far more interesting than the soul-sucking dwellers that were shoehorned in. That being said, the movie is steeped with a lot of history, amazing action scenes, and it also contains one of the best villains in the MCU. I actually thought that this film would completely wipe all of Iron Man 3 out, and though it does to some extent, I actually appreciate that they managed to incorporate Trevor in some way, so people that liked that movie, which I'm ashamed to say I did, don't feel like it's been dumped on. This is what an origin story should be in my opinion, and it really succeeded in its goal of getting me completely invested in Shang-Chi and the future of the 10 rings. Though it isn't Tenet in terms of complexity, I think the character building here is absolutely amazing, and the action scenes are some of the best choreographed moments in the entire MCU. Shang-Chi had the difficult task of not only competing with other comic book movies, but it also had to go head to head with kung fu blockbusters as well. I actually think that it manages to hold its own against both in the genre, and it excels in terms of storytelling and action, even if the second hour is worse than the first in my opinion. Normally I spoil Marvel movies for myself due to leaks and speaking to people that have seen it at premieres, but outside of the post-credits scene I went into this movie completely blind, and I'm so glad that I did. Even with the faults I had, I can completely understand why the movie went the way that it did. It's just my personal preference that we would have stuck with when we was the major threat, rather than pushing in this hypnotic dragon, but you know, they need to sell toys and a big action spectacle for the third act. That being said, I really hope that this gets the attention it deserves, and I know there is probably a lot riding on this in terms of whether Venom, the Eternals and No Way Home gets delayed. So yeah, if you haven't seen it for whatever reason, then go and watch it and make up your own mind, as I know there's people out there who hated it, and also some that think it's in the top 5 Marvel movies ever. I'm not sure exactly where I rank it, however I will be going back to watch it again, and though I have my issues, I did have fun overall. There are some minor criticisms here and there, but the good far outweighs the bad, and because of this, Shang-Chi gets an 8 out of 10. Now obviously, let me know your thoughts on the film below, and as a thank you for dropping a comment, you'll be entered into a prize draw on the 30th of September, in which we're giving away 3 copies of Zack Snyder's DC trilogy. The winners of the last month are on screen right now, and if you want a chance for this one, then just leave a like, drop a comment, and make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications on. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the perfect scene in X-Men First Class, which will be linked on screen right now. I think the movie's absolutely incredible, and I love talking about the coin scene in it, so definitely go check it out right after this. With that out of the way, thank you for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.